I want you to think about what it feels like to not know where your child is, not the fear of it, the actual living with it, day after day, month after month, getting up in the morning, answering the phone, watching the news, selling pink bracelets on a street corner because it's the only thing left you can do. Greg and Cammie did that for 5 years. 5 years of not knowing where their daughter was. 5 years of no grave to visit, no place to bring flowers, no way to say goodbye. This is the story of how they finally got that, and what it cost them to get it. Brooke Carol Wilberger was born on February 20th, 1985, in Fresno, California, the fifth of 6 children born to Greg and Cammie Wilberger. The family eventually settled outside of Eugene, Oregon, in the small community of Veneta. It was rural and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and the neighbors show up when life gets hard. It was a fitting place for the Wilbergers because family was everything to them. Growing up as the 5th child in a house full of people meant that Brooke rarely had a moment to herself, and she didn't seem to mind one bit. Her older sister Stephanie remembered dressing her up like a little doll when she was small. "We used to just have so much fun dressing her up," Stephanie told Dateline's Kate Snow years later. "She was kind of our little toy, if you will. She was just fun." It was a memory offered with such warmth and such grief, wrapped together that it was hard to separate the two. But Brooke wasn't content being anyone's little toy for long. She grew into a natural athlete, playing basketball, running track, and competing on the soccer field with an energy that apparently outpaced most of her siblings. Her brother Bryce put it plainly: she was better than most of the rest of us at the sports we played. She was also a dedicated 4-H participant, which spoke to something in her that was easy to overlook, a quiet, steady work ethic that had nothing to do with showing off. Her faith ran just as deep as her drive. Brooke was a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it shaped the way she moved through the world, deliberately, with intention, without the vices that tripped up so many teenagers. She didn't drink. She didn't smoke. She was, by every account from the people who knew her best, exactly who she appeared to be. She graduated from Elmira High School near Eugene, and when it came time to think about college, she surprised her entire family. Every one of her siblings had gone to Oregon State University, the local choice, the familiar choice. But Brooke chose Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Her father, Greg, remembered the reaction clearly. "We were really kind of surprised. All the other kids have gone to OSU." She wanted to study speech pathology and elementary education. She wanted to work with children who had speech impediments. She had thought it through. Getting to BYU wasn't easy. The family wasn't wealthy, and Brooke knew it. So she worked. Every summer, every break. At BYU, she took a job in the campus dining services and threw herself into it with the same determination she brought to everything else. Cammie Wilberger, her mother, shared one particular memory that said everything about who her youngest daughter was becoming. Brooke had been assigned to make deliveries, driving a large truck around campus, and she called home, genuinely thrilled. "She told me, 'I drove in the snow, Mom,'" Cammie recounted. She was proud of herself, not because it was glamorous, but because she had done something new, something hard, and she had handled it. At BYU, Brooke also discovered something that made everyone who knew her smile: country line dancing. Her father chuckled about it. At BYU, she got into country dancing, which seems a bit odd for her. She even started listening to some cowboy music. She was 19. She was figuring herself out. She had a boyfriend named Justin Blake, a childhood friend she had known for years, who was away serving a Mormon mission in Venezuela. She was waiting for him. She had plans. Her dorm mates in the all-female Deseret Towers residence hall at BYU would later describe her the same way, over and over again. "She was just the warmest, kindest person," said one friend, Wait, who lived on the same floor during Brooke's freshman year. 6 women from that floor had already made plans to live together the following year. Brooke was one of them. She had just finished that freshman year, her first year away from home, her first winter in the Utah snow, her first real taste of independence, when she packed up her things and headed back to Oregon for the summer. She had work to do, money to save, family to see. It was May 2004. She was 19 years old. She had never been more alive. Brooke spent the early weeks of that summer living with her sister Stephanie Hansen and Stephanie's husband Zach, who managed the Oak Park Apartments, a residential complex at 1219 SW 26th Street in Corvallis, Oregon, located directly across from Oregon State University's football stadium. The arrangement made sense. Brooke was there to work for the summer. Stephanie needed help around the complex. And being close to family was never something Brooke had to be talked into. The work was simple, unglamorous, honest, cleaning the outdoor lampposts and light fixtures that lined the complex's parking lot. It was the kind of chore most people would find tedious. Brooke showed up for it anyway. On the morning of Monday, May 24th, 2004, Stephanie left the apartment around 9 a.m. to drive to a preschool. Brooke was outside as she left, filling a bucket with water in preparation for cleaning the light poles near the outdoor pool area. She was dressed in a gray BYU t-shirt, blue jeans, and a pair of foam flip-flops. Stephanie saw her. It was the last time anyone who loved Brooke would see her alive. Somewhere between 10 and 11 that morning, a single scream was heard by one of the apartment residents. Just one. No one came to the window in time to see anything. No one called out. There were no security cameras covering that stretch of parking lot. And when Stephanie returned a short time later, what she found stopped her in her tracks. The cleaning bucket was there. The flip-flops were there, sitting where Brooke had left them. Inside the apartment, her keys, her wallet, her cell phone, her car, everything except Brooke. Stephanie and her husband searched the complex. They called out. They walked the lot, the grounds, the surrounding area. Nothing. And then Zach Hansen made a call to police. His voice, recorded in that initial call, carried the particular kind of calm that comes when someone is actively fighting panic. He described Brooke as a worker of mine. Then he said, "She actually happens to be my sister-in-law. She's 19. Police arrived quickly. By the end of that day, with no trace of where Brooke had gone, and every one of her personal belongings still in place, investigators at the Corvallis Police Department drew a conclusion that no one in the Wilberger family wanted to hear. Brooke had almost certainly been abducted. By May 25, 2004, just one day after Brooke disappeared, the Corvallis Police Department held a news conference and made it official. Captain Robert Deutsch told reporters what the evidence already made plain. There's every indication to us that some kind of crime was committed. The word abduction was now attached to a 19-year-old girl's name, and it spread fast. By May 26, the story had gone national. Brooke's face appeared on television screens across the country, a bright, smiling photograph from a family album, the kind of image that stops people mid-scroll. The Corvallis community, meanwhile, did not wait for instructions. Hundreds of volunteers materialized almost immediately, organizing themselves into search parties that fanned out across Benton County. Over the following weeks, they would collectively comb through nearly 4,000 acres of land, looking for any trace of where she had gone. The Corvallis police worked the case from every angle they could find. They spoke to residents of the apartment complex. They ran down tips. Eventually, more than 5,000 of them would come in. They reached out to the roughly 2,000 registered sex offenders in the surrounding area, interviewing dozens of them. Nothing concrete surfaced. One early person of interest was a 30-year-old man named Sung-Koo Kim, who had been arrested shortly after Brooke's disappearance for stealing women's underwear from college dormitories near Oregon State University. His proximity to the campus and the nature of his crimes drew investigators' attention. However, an alibi confirmed he had been at work during the window when Brooke was taken. He remained a person of interest for months before being officially cleared by police on February 7, 2005. Investigators also looked carefully at Brooke's boyfriend, Justin Blake, as a matter of standard procedure in cases like this. He was cleared almost immediately. He was serving his mission in Venezuela, thousands of miles away, with no possible connection to what had happened. Witnesses near the Oak Park apartments reported something else that drew investigators' attention. A green minivan had been seen in the area around the time of the abduction, driving in a manner that a couple of female witnesses found strange enough to notice and remember. Police traced what they could, but at that stage, the lead was thin. Witnesses had also reported two separate incidents that same morning in which a man had approached other young women near Oregon State University in a manner that alarmed them enough to leave. Those women got away. Investigators didn't yet know those incidents were connected to Brooke's disappearance, but they would. In September 2004, 4 months into the investigation and running out of fresh angles, the Corvallis police reached out to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for help. The organization responded by sending 3 retired investigators to Corvallis to offer a fresh set of eyes on the evidence. In October 2004, the Wilberger family launched something quiet but powerful. They began selling pink bracelets as a fundraiser. They called them a reminder to maintain hope. For the people who bought them and wore them around Corvallis, they became exactly that, something tangible to hold on to when the case seemed to be going nowhere. On November 24, 2004, 6 months to the day after Brooke vanished, the family announced they were doubling the reward for information leading to her location, raising it from $3,000 to $6,000. It was a small amount of money for such a large ask, but it was what they had. Cammie and Greg Wilberger were doing everything they could from the inside of a grief they couldn't fully name yet, because they still didn't know for certain what had happened to their daughter. 6 days later, everything changed, though no one in Corvallis knew it yet. On November 30, 2004, police in Albuquerque, New Mexico, arrested a man named Joel Patrick Courtney for the kidnapping and rape of a foreign exchange student at the University of New Mexico. The victim had escaped. She was brave, and her bravery, the sheer determination it took to get away and call for help, would ultimately be the thing that cracked a case unfolding 1,200 miles away in Oregon. Joel was 37 years old at the time of his arrest. On the surface, he lived an ordinary life. He was married, he had children, he held down jobs. Beneath the surface was something else entirely. Joel had grown up in Washington County, Oregon, the brother of a woman named Dina McBride. Dina would later speak publicly about what it had been like to grow up alongside him. She described a childhood that started normally enough, then shifted when Joel fell in with older teenagers during his early teens, teenagers who introduced him to drugs and substance abuse. He was 11 years old when he started using. By 15, he had developed an obsession with Satanism. He was in and out of juvenile hall for sexual offenses, and Dina disclosed something far more disturbing. Joel had tried to sexually assault her, entering her room in the middle of the night, his hand around her neck. He would come in the middle of the night and put a hand around my neck and attempt to sexually assault me, she recalled in an interview with Dateline. She had once had to strike him over the head with a clock to stop him. He was eventually convicted of sex abuse in Washington County in 1991 and served time in jail. It did not stop him. Joel was a man with a genius-level IQ, according to those who knew him, which made the arc of his life not tragic in the way you might expect, but something colder. He had the capacity to understand consequences and chose, again and again, not to be deterred by them. By the time Joel arrived in New Mexico and attacked the university student there, investigators would later learn that just 6 months before that attack, his own wife had filed a restraining order against him, alleging that he had choked her. The pattern of his behavior was not a secret, not entirely. It had simply not yet been connected to the right case in the right state. The New Mexico case changed that. As detectives in New Mexico began building their case against Joel, one detail in his background stood out. He had been arrested in Lincoln County, Oregon, in January 2004 for driving under the influence. He had failed to appear in court, and a warrant had been issued for his arrest. A New Mexico detective, following up on Joel's prior record, called the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office in Oregon to discuss that DUI case. In the course of that conversation, the New Mexico detective shared details about the sexual assault Joel had committed, the circumstances, the method, the type of victim. The Lincoln County detective on the other end of the line listened carefully. Something about what was being described sounded familiar. Not Lincoln County familiar, Corvallis familiar. And that Lincoln County detective picked up the phone and called the Corvallis Police Department. It was, as prosecutor Theresa Whatley would later observe, the nature of a seasoned criminal's psychology working against itself. You don't start grabbing people in broad daylight off a street and grab them into your car when you're almost 40, she told Dateline. That's not the way the criminal mind works. Joel had done this before. He had done it for a long time, and now, finally, those dots were being connected. When Corvallis investigators began looking into Joel's background and movements, the picture sharpened fast. They learned that in May 2004, the exact period when Brooke disappeared, Joel had been visiting Oregon with his wife and children, staying with his sister Dina in the Portland suburbs. His cell phone records placed him in Corvallis on the morning of May 24, 2004. Additionally, witnesses who had reported seeing a green minivan near the Oak Park apartments on the morning of Brooke's disappearance had described something that now matched. Joel had been driving a green 1997 Dodge Caravan. When investigators went back through the early witness reports more carefully, Two female witnesses confirmed they had been approached that same morning by a man in a green van near the apartments and had been alarmed enough to leave. Both had gotten away. Brooke had not. Police had actually spoken to Joel in the early weeks of the investigation. He had provided an alibi and was not immediately flagged as a suspect. But now, with the New Mexico connection, they returned to his file. When his Dodge Caravan was eventually forensically examined, investigators found something that removed all remaining doubt: strands of Brooke's hair inside the van. Joel was convicted in New Mexico for the kidnapping and rape of the University of New Mexico student, the crime that had ultimately led investigators to Brooke's case. He received an 18-year prison sentence for those offenses. On January 5, 2007, after a legal process that included extradition proceedings involving New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Joel was returned to Oregon to face charges in Brooke's case. He was formally indicted on counts of kidnapping and aggravated murder. Benton County District Attorney John Haroldson was unequivocal about what the evidence showed and equally unequivocal about what he intended to seek: the death penalty. In 2006, while the legal process was still moving through its channels, Greg and Cammie Wilberger filed a civil lawsuit against the company that had employed Joel, alleging that insufficient background checks had been conducted before hiring him. It was the kind of legal action that spoke to something deeper than money, a family trying to understand how someone with Joel's documented history of violence could have remained so invisible to the systems that were supposed to flag people like him. For years, the case loomed. The Wilberger family did not know where their daughter was. They did not know where to go to grieve. There was no place to bring flowers. There was no grave. Cammie Wilberger made a decision, together with the rest of her family, that would require something very hard from a mother. She agreed to support a plea deal, one that would take the death penalty off the table if Joel would tell them where Brooke's body was. "Our family has kind of likened this to an iceberg experience," Cammie said publicly. "Although what the public sees seems raised and maybe devastating, it's nothing compared to what we see on the inside." On the weekend of September 19th and 20th, 2009, more than 5 years after Brooke disappeared, Joel Patrick Courtney sat across from investigators and told them, for the first time, what had happened to her on May 24, 2004. He had targeted her at knife point in the parking lot of the Oak Park Apartments that morning. He bound her with duct tape inside his van. He drove her into the woods. He kept her overnight. He raped her. And then he bludgeoned her to death and left her body in a shallow grave in the remote, rugged reaches of the Oregon Coast Range, near Blodgett, Oregon, in terrain so dense and isolated that without his cooperation, it is entirely possible she would never have been found. Joel led investigators to the location. Her remains were recovered. On September 21, 2009, Benton County District Attorney John Haroldson stood before cameras at a press conference in Corvallis and announced what had happened. He did not soften it. He abducted her, Haroldson said. He raped her, he murdered her, and left her body in the woods. Joel pleaded guilty to aggravated murder in Marion County Circuit Court in Salem, Oregon. He was 43 years old. He received a sentence of life in prison without any possibility of parole, what prosecutors described as true life. He has never apologized. District Attorney Haroldson confirmed that Joel showed no remorse, not in the courtroom, not in private. Cammie Wilberger stood at that same press conference with John Haroldson at her side, and she said something that has stayed with people who followed this case ever since. She spoke of gratitude, not the reflexive, polite kind, but something far more complicated and real. "It might be hard for you to understand," Cammie said, her voice steady, "but at this time, we really feel gratitude, even to Mr. Courtney." She thanked him for finally telling them where her daughter was. She said the family was grateful that justice had been served and that Joel would have no opportunity for parole. And then, now he can go on with what's left of his life. It was a statement of extraordinary grace from a woman who had spent 5 years not knowing where her child was buried. It was also, in its quiet way, an act of refusal, a refusal to let Joel Courtney own this story any more than he already had. After Brooke was recovered, her family was finally able to lay her to rest, something they had been unable to do for more than 5 years. For the first time since May 24, 2004, they knew where she was. That knowledge, painful as it was also something. In 2006, Greg and Cammie, along with friends and other family members, established the Brooke Wilberger Memorial Scholarship through the Oregon Community Foundation. The fund provides grants to Oregon high school students who demonstrate leadership, citizenship, and an enthusiasm for life. They chose those qualities deliberately, because that is who Brooke was, a young woman who led through warmth, who showed up for people, who attacked a summer cleaning job with the same energy she brought to her dreams. Her BYU dorm mates, the 6 women who had planned to live together in their sophomore year, were scattered by what happened. Several of them gathered in the days after Joel's guilty plea was announced, and one of them, Wait, spoke to a reporter about what she remembered most. She was just the warmest, kindest person, she said simply. There was nothing more elaborate to add. It was enough. Joel Patrick Courtney remains incarcerated, serving his sentence without the possibility of release. He has never expressed regret. He agreed to reveal Brooke's location not out of remorse, but as part of a negotiated agreement that would allow him to serve his time in a New Mexico facility closer to his family. The irony of that, a man who destroyed a family being permitted proximity to his own, is not lost on those who followed the case closely. But for the Wilbergers, it was a price they chose to pay. They chose their daughter over revenge. They chose closure over a prolonged death penalty trial that would have dragged them through years more of public hearings and grief made spectacle. The detectives who worked the case have begun to retire. The missing person posters that once lined the streets of Corvallis have been stored away at the Corvallis Police Department. The tens of thousands of pages of case files sit quietly at the Benton County District Attorney's Office. And in the community she grew up on the edge of, people still remember the pink bracelets and what they were meant to mean. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in real investigations, shocking cases, and justice served, please subscribe, leave a comment, and join us as we explore more true crime stories.